I am not your attorney. I'm not representing anybody here today. I can't give legal advice. I can share information. So please don't ask personal questions. If you don't understand something that I explain, go ahead and type that question in the chat box. I'd be happy to explain things more clearly, but don't ask personal questions. I will have resources for you at the end that will include a program that can help you answer your individual questions. So that is going to be provided. It's just not going to happen during today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. If you guys will remember from the first session, SSI is a needs-based program. And so that means that other income and resources you have are going to impact your eligibility for SSI. So I'm not going to make you guys do the math. It's complicated, but I want to give you kind of an overview, a big picture of the math involved. So Social Security uses a special formula to calculate the amount of your SSI payment. So they're not going to count the first $20 that you get from any source of income. So general income disregard. And then they're not going to count the first $65 and then 1/2 the remainder of your wages. And then there are some other work-specific tools that we're going to talk about and how they impact the calculation. So they count the income you have using these rules, and then they subtract your countable income from your maximum SSI benefit. So the maximum SSI benefit for 2021 for an individual is $794 a month. If you have two people who are eligible for SSI and are married to each other, they're called an SSI couple. If they're an SSI couple, the amount maximum they can get this year is $1,191. So some people aren't getting that $794, and I get questions all the time, well, why am I getting less than that? And a common scenario is that people will say, well, I'm only getting $524. They will subtract 1/3 of the maximum benefit rate if you're considered to be living in the household of another person. And, I'm a NAMI parent. This comes up all the time. Your loved one gets out of the hospital, they're not feeling great, they don't have a lot of income, they need some tender loving care, and we want them to come live with us, right? That's what we do. They come live with us, and that can actually reduce the amount of the SSI payment unless they're paying rent, fair market value rent. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And then I also wanted to make you aware that there's a 2-month lag. So any income you have this month in August is going to affect the calculation of your SSI payment in October. And that's a hard one for people because, if I get some extra money this month, it's going to be spent by October. If my income has gone down in October, but I'm going to get a reduced SSI payment, it makes it hard to pay the bills. So I just wanted to make folks aware of that 2-month lag. Want to stop and see if there are any questions in the chat box before we talk about the work-related tools. Have we got anything, Julia?
No, not yet. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So I want to tell you about 4 amazing tools in the SSI program that help to reduce that countable income, which means you'll get more money in SSI. The first one is called the Student Earned Income Exclusion, or the SEIE, because Social Security loves acronyms. This is for individuals who are under age 22 and are enrolled full-time in school. And for those individuals, they get extra income deductions. And so I use this a lot with individuals who maybe are in high school and working during the summer. Maybe they're in college and they're doing some sort of co-op or internship opportunity. And this year, the SEIE says that you can deduct up to $1,930 a month, up to an annual cap of $7,770. So if you think about that, that's fantastic. So if somebody's offered a co-op opportunity, if they want to work during the summer in their field and get some work experience, this exclusion allows them to do that without really hugely impacting their SSI payment. So that money's not counted at all. And so a lot of students are able to keep that full $794 a month, even while they're doing some work experiences. But remember, it only goes up to age 22. So the minute you turn 22, you are no longer eligible for this benefit. The next one I want to talk about is the impairment related work expense. And some of you might be going, wait a minute, you talked about this last month when we talked about Social Security disability. And that is absolutely right. I did talk about it with Social Security disability because it's a deduction that they use too. But here's how it works for SSI. They deduct the amount of the impairment related work expense, and that reduces your countable income. So for every $2 you spend on an impairment related work expense, you get $1 more in SSI. So let's talk about what an IRWE or an impairment related work expense is. It's a good or service that you need because of your disability that you have to have in order to be able to work, and you're paying for it out of your own pocket. So I'll give you guys some common examples that I've seen for individuals with mental health diagnoses. These can include things like therapy expenses, medications, transportation to and from work. So I'll give you guys an example. My son has bipolar disorder. He cannot use public transportation. His anxiety is so severe when he's enclosed with other people and he doesn't have control. He has to drive himself to and from work. So we got a statement from his therapist explaining that he would not be able to use public transportation because of his mental health condition, and he has to be able to get to and from work. And so he's actually able to use the mileage using the IRS mileage rate of his trips to and from work and deduct the value of those. So with SSI, what would happen if you deduct that as an IRWE? For every $2 you spend on that transportation, you're going to get $1 back in SSI. So it increases the amount of SSI you can get when you have an IRWE. Another one that may not be as common for folks on the call today, but it's called a blind work expense. So if somebody meets Social Security's statutory definition of blindness, they get to deduct all expenses associated with working. Now, you'll notice I said all expenses, not just disability related expenses. So this can include things like state and local taxes that they're paying. This can include uniforms. Even if everybody at work has to pay for a uniform, the cost of uniforms or union dues, meals that you have at work, all of that can be deducted from blind work expenses. So if somebody's statutorily blind, this is an additional incentive that's available for them. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know about is what's called a PASS plan, or plan to achieve self-support. And a PASS is a savings plan that allows somebody to save some of their own money towards a vocational goal. So they've got to have income other than SSI. They've got to have maybe some Social Security disability or childhood disability benefits. Maybe they're working and have some wages, and they can set aside some of that money towards a vocational goal that Social Security is approved, and then they get more money in SSI to make up for the money that they've set aside into their PASS plan account. So common things that people use PASSes for are to pay for maybe some education or training they need, maybe start your own business, maybe you need to buy inventory, or maybe you need a computer, you're going to do some online business, things like that, internet service. So it requires a really detailed plan that you draft, a business plan basically that you come up with, and you figure out the timing of when you'll be able to buy each item. And then Social Security has to approve it before you can start setting the money aside. But it's a wonderful tool for individuals to be able to reach their vocational goals while having extra income to make up for the money that they're setting aside. So I want to stop for a minute and see if there are any questions about any of these work-related tools before I move on. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to type those in the chat box, and then Julia can let me know if there are any questions. So I'm going to pause for just a minute here. Okay, Julia, I don't see any questions.
There are no questions. No, there aren't.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right. Oh, I just see somebody pop something up in the chat box, but I can't see it. Julia, oh, a couple of questions coming in, okay.
Julia. If you have a mental illness, how do you qualify for SSI?
That's a wonderful question, and I encourage you to contact NAMI of Southwest Ohio and ask for the presentation. that I did back in June, because it goes over all of those criteria for how you qualify. You can get the PowerPoints I did. You can also get the recording of the presentation. So I encourage you to either shoot Julia a chat now or call the office and ask for those materials. They can set you up with those. What else do we have, Julia?
Okay, if you have a mental illness, how do you qualify for SSI? And I work now.
Even if you're working, you may still qualify. And again, that's all explained in the June presentation. So if you get those materials, it will walk you through all of that.
And there's one more question. Would it be good to have a lawyer help with the pass?
I do recommend having maybe not a lawyer, but at least an expert help you with those. And one of the resources that I'll give you guys at the end of the presentation is how to contact your WIPA agency. And your WIPA agency can actually help you to draft and submit a pass plan to Social Security.
That's it for now. Any other questions?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward then. Thank you, Julia. I really appreciate it. So the next thing I want to talk about is what's called 1619B status. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's actually the section of a statute. And so that's what they call it. And what this means is that you've earned so much in wages that your countable income is more than the SSI payment rate. So your SSI payments actually reduced to zero. But you'd still be eligible for SSI if your wages were reduced. So if you cut back on your wages, you would be SSI eligible. What 1619B does is allow you to keep your SSI eligibility status so that you keep your Medicaid coverage. You guys remember when we talked back in June, I told you that in Ohio, if you're eligible for SSI, you're automatically eligible for Medicaid. And I know for a lot of people, the thought of losing your health coverage is really scary. I work and I need my health insurance to be able to work. I have really severe asthma, and if I didn't treat that, I wouldn't be able to work successfully. So for a lot of individuals living with a mental health diagnosis, it's the same. If they weren't able to keep their health coverage, they weren't able to stay with their treatment and their recovery plan, it would be very challenging for them to work. So 1619B is a wonderful tool that allows people to work and earn more. Currently this year for individuals, there's an earnings threshold, and in the state of Ohio for 1619B this year, it's $36,985. It's almost $40,000. It's important to know, though, that that's a general threshold, and you can get an individualized threshold if you have higher than average Medicaid costs. And so, for example, I know a lot of individuals with a mental health diagnosis who may be spending a lot on medication every month, and maybe they're not spending it out of their pocket. Maybe Medicaid's covering that for them, but they're higher than average costs. And because they have those higher than average costs, they actually have a higher 1619B threshold. And again, if you have questions about how much you're working and earning and whether or not you might be able to get an individualized 1619B threshold, we'll talk at the end about how to connect with your WIPA agency so you can ask them just that question. The nice thing is they'll do all the math for you. So I want to talk about expedited reinstatement, and this is a really important concept. People are always very worried about what happens if I work and earn so much that my benefits are terminated. And it took me years to get on benefits, right? I had to apply and they denied me and I had to appeal and it took years. I don't want to have to go through that again. It's really stressful. It makes me anxious. Totally understand that. So there's this wonderful tool called expedited reinstatement. And what it says is that if your SSI benefits are actually terminated because of work activity. So let's say that you worked and you were making $45,000 a year and you didn't have an individualized 1619B threshold, your benefits would actually be terminated at that point. You would lose your SSI eligibility. But you have a 5-year window to get back on really quickly and easily. And if that 60-month period, you have to reduce your wages to below that level so that you would be eligible for SSI again. you can get up to 6 months of provisional payments while they look just at whether you medically improved. So you don't have to prove the original disability all over again. They're just going to look to see if you've medically improved. And the way I always explain to my clients is they're looking to see if like your schizophrenia has been cured. And the chances of that are very slim. You may be on some better treatment, but you're probably not cured. And so most people are able to get back on with expedited reinstatement. This works really well for my clients who have a mental health diagnosis because oftentimes mental health diagnoses are cyclical and you're able to work for a while and do really, really well. And then something happens and you get sick. Maybe you end up back in the hospital. Maybe your medication just stops working and you have to start all over again to get better. And so what expedited reinstatement does is it says, go ahead and work as much as you can, earn as much as you can. And if something happens and your benefits are stopped, you have a 5-year window to get back on if you need to. And in my experience, if most people, if they're able to work and earn this much over 5 years, they're usually going to be able to work successfully long term. So this is a really wonderful safety net for people. Are there any questions about 1619B or expedited reinstatement before I move on? All right, I don't see any.
I don't see any.
Thank you, Julia. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So I did tell you guys that if you get SSI, you get Medicaid, it's automatic. And I told you guys about 1619B Medicaid, which is if you would be eligible for SSI, but for your earnings and you're earning below that 1619B threshold, you'll keep your Medicaid coverage. But there's some other Medicaid programs I wanted to let you know about because sometimes these are useful. The first one I want to let you know about is Magi Medicaid. This is what people may think of as the Medicaid expansion or Obamacare Medicaid. This is Medicaid for individuals with income up to 138% of the federal poverty level. And the reason I'm mentioning it is that a lot of times when someone's applying for SSI, they don't have Medicaid coverage while they're waiting. And so this is a category of Medicaid that can be very helpful. So when my son applied for his Social Security benefits, he was on Magi Medicaid while he was waiting for that disability determination. So it's a great resource and I wanted to make sure you guys knew about it. Right now, again, it's 138% of federal poverty levels, the maximum. So that would be $1,481 per month. So if you're waiting for Social Security benefits and you need Medicaid coverage, Magi may be a great tool for you to use. There's also a program called Medicaid Buy-in for Workers with Disabilities, commonly called NBIWD. And this program allows people who are working and disabled to have Medicaid coverage with much higher income levels. I think the last time I looked, it was over $60,000. So that's more than 1619B Medicaid, right? So the question, what if I lost 1619B Medicaid because I earned too much? Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities would be an option. And the great thing about NBIWD is that it's the same full coverage. It has a small premium potentially, depends on your income. They do a calculation based on your income to see whether or not you would have a premium, but they've not collected premiums for NBIWD in almost 4 years. Don't know what's going on with the state of Ohio, but a lot of states have figured out that it costs them more to collect NBIWD premiums than they actually are able to collect. So they're losing money by collecting them. Ohio hasn't said that officially, but they did stop collecting them years ago. And so right now they're not even collecting them. The premiums that I see for folks are often significantly lower than you would have like through our employers, right? So they are usually lower premiums. And like I said, they're not even collecting them right now. I can't promise you that will last forever, but for right now, they're not collecting it. So NBIWD is a wonderful program. Couple points about it. One, you do not have to be getting a Social Security benefit to get NBIWD. So let's say you've applied for Social Security, but you're not getting it yet. you could get this. They can do their own disability determination. So this is awesome for people who are, again, thinking about work, applying for benefits, or maybe they don't want to apply for benefits, but they have a disability and they're working. This would be the program for them. I've had a lot of questions over the past year and a half from people on NBIWD about what happens if I stop working. A lot of people have lost their jobs during the pandemic. A lot of people had health issues where they've been unable to work. And the nice thing about NBIWD is as long as you plan to go back to work, they're okay with covering you even when you can't work. So I've had clients who maybe they've had a period where they're not doing as well and they've had to stop working for a little bit. Maybe they've had a hospitalization or a partial hospitalization and they still need their medical coverage, obviously. This would be an option for those folks. And then the last category of Medicaid I wanted to tell you guys about is a program called SRS, or Specialized Recovery Services Medicaid. This is for people with specific medical diagnoses, but it includes mental health conditions. And it covers people up to $2,382 a month income right now. So this is a great program because it includes things like case management and peer support services and things that individuals with mental health diagnoses may need. So this is another great Medicaid category if somebody is not either getting SSI related Medicaid or 1619B Medicaid, SRS may be an option for folks. All of these Medicaid programs are administered by your county Job and Family Services Office, or JFS office. And so that's where you would go with any questions about them. You can apply for all of these online. And so you can go to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services and apply for benefits online. So it's quick and easy to do. If you're not comfortable doing it by computer, you can also look up, there's a phone number for a consumer Medicaid hotline. You could call them and apply that way too. So there's kind of different ways you can get your foot in the door. You can also just contact your local office and ask for an application. But any of those ways will get you to any of these Medicaid programs. I'm going to pause for a minute and see if there are any questions about Medicaid, Julia.
Yes, there are a couple of questions. One person confirming that one can make $38,000 and still keep SSI. She logged on late, so she wanted to confirm that.
So if you've got SSI Medicaid right now, you can earn up to $36,985 and keep that Medicaid through a program called 1619B. But if you have higher than average medical costs that Medicaid's paying, maybe expensive medications, maybe you've had some hospitalizations recently, if you have a higher than average cost of care, you can earn even more with an individualized threshold, or you can look to one of these Medicaid programs.
Thank you, Deborah. There's another question. Does MAGI Medicaid at 138% of federal poverty level per month, or $1,481 a month, according to, I think, 2021, also apply to SSDI recipients?
That's a great question. So SSDI recipients can be on MAGI Medicaid while they're in that 24-month waiting period for Medicare. But once they get their Medicare coverage, they can no longer have MAGI Medicaid. So my son's getting Social Security disability, and he's in that 24-month waiting period. And so he still has his MAGI Medicaid. He's kept that. And he's using that right now while he's waiting for his Medicare coverage. If he earns a little bit more, which he's at risk of doing, because he's working, he would be able to use Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities to be able to cover his Medicaid. So it's possible to go from one category of Medicaid to another category like that. Any other questions, Julia?
No, no more questions right now.
Great, thank you, you guys. I really appreciate the questions. It's wonderful because it tells me that you guys are really understanding and thinking about what we're talking about. So thank you. All right, let's move on. So remember I said that SSI was a needs-based program. And so not only income is going to affect your eligibility, but resources affect your eligibility. And currently, individuals cannot have more than $2,000 in countable resources, and eligible couples can't have more than $3,000 in resources. And it's always so frustrating to me when I'm encouraging people to go to work and telling them that they can go to work and that they can earn money and they can do all these amazing things. And then I tell them, but you can't save any of that money. That's a terrible feeling. I mean, that's the American dream, right? You work, you save, you buy the things that you need and want. So there's a tool that people can use to be able to save money that will not count for SSI. So I wanted to remind you guys, I know we talked about it in June, but I wanted to remind you guys now about this. It's called a stable account. And you can apply online. I've given you guys the website here on the slides. In order to have one of these accounts, you have to have a disability that started before age 26. It doesn't mean you have to have been diagnosed by Social Security at any point or before age 26, although if you do have Social Security benefits, you're presumed to meet their disability definition. But you could also maybe just have medical records that you've set aside. Maybe you have a diagnosis. Some people, maybe they don't start having symptoms until they're in college, and maybe it takes them a few years to actually get a diagnosis or to think about applying for disability benefits. The stable account, as long as they had met the criteria for disability before the age of 26, they can apply for these. So because of the age of onset of a lot of mental health conditions being late teens, early 20s, a lot of individuals with mental health conditions actually qualify for stable accounts. And so all you need is $50 to deposit and start your account. And the nice thing about a stable account is you can self-fund it. So you can put your own money into your stable account, or other people can contribute. And so family members, friends can put money into your stable account for you. That's perfectly allowed. It doesn't count as income for SSI. And you can save up to $15,000 a year in a stable account. And if you're working, you get to save even more. You can save up to $12,760 from your wages. So that's almost $28,000 a year that you can be setting aside in a stable account if you want to save for it. Stable account has both banking and investment options. And so just like any other investment tool, there's different levels of risk, or you can just set it up straight up like a savings or checking account. There's a lifetime cap for how much you can set aside. It goes up a little bit each year. And that amount this year is just over $500,000 you can put into these accounts. And you can spend the funds on what are called qualified disability expenses. This can include things like living expenses, transportation, education. You can do rent, you could buy groceries. It's very, very broad. You can spend this money on a whole lot of things. And the beautiful thing about a stable account is that Social Security for SSI will not count the first $100,000 in a stable account. So would you rather have a $2,000 cap or a $100,000 cap? I don't know. I'd take the $100,000 cap. So this is a great tool. And one of the things I've been doing and helping families with lately is, they say that if somebody gives you money, so like, let's say you had a family member living on SSI and they only had $794 a month. And we know that rents in Cincinnati right now, the average is over $1,000. How's that supposed to work, right? So maybe you want to give your loved one a few $100s each month to help them pay their rent. When we talked about the normal SSI rules, if you gave somebody, let's say you were giving them $300 a month, then the first $20 wouldn't count. And after that, they would lose $280 of their SSI because you were helping them pay their rent. So only $20 of that would really be free for them. The rest of it, they would lose their SSI amount. They lose that $280 in SSI. Well, now you can put the $300 a month into their stable account, and they can use it to spend it on any qualifying disability expenses. And they can set it up different ways. They can have checks issued out of that account. So it's the Ohio State Treasurer's Office that manages it. So you can even set it up with them that, like, my rent is $800 a month, and I want you to send a check to this landlord for $800 every month, and they can issue the check. You can get a debit card. And the beautiful thing about this debit card is you load as much as you want onto the debit card at a time. So maybe you're the rep payee for somebody. You can help them set up a stable account. And let's say that of their benefits, you give them $50 a month as spending money. You can put $50 a month onto the debit card for them. And then you don't risk that if somebody hacked that card, that they would get all the money. All they could get is the $50 that's on there. So there's lots of different options and ways that they can use these stable accounts. So especially when people are working, and you don't have to be working to have a stable account. I've got clients who are not working who have stable accounts. But if you are working and you want to be able to save some of that money that you're earning, this is a great tool to be able to use and be able to save money and not worry about it adversely impacting your SSI and your Medicaid. So I'm going to pause for a minute and see if you guys have questions about stable accounts.
There are a couple of questions. Trying to figure out income limit for SSDI beneficiary who receives Medicaid and Medicare from OJFS. OJFS sends me forms to continue Medicaid benefits.
So again, we're not talking about Social Security disability today. We talked about that in June and we talked about that in July. But again, I'll give you the WIPA information and take a look at it. The information that you're getting from JFS is they require for Medicaid recipients that they do an annual recertification where they're verifying their information to make sure that they're still eligible. What's the next question, Julia?
The next question is, would the stable account be a tool for SSDI, not SSI, recipient resources in order to continue to qualify for Medicare extra help, QMB and OJFS food assistance, and Medicaid?
There's somebody thinking outside the box. That's a great question. So we know Social Security disability doesn't have a resource limit. So you might not think about a stable account for those folks. But if they're getting extra help or QMB to help with their Medicare premiums, those programs do have resource limits. Food stamps, SNAP benefits have a resource limit. And so absolutely they could use a stable account. And it would not count as resources for those other programs. It doesn't count as a resource for subsidized housing or any of those JFS benefits. So that was a great question. Anything else, Julia?
Yes. Can it be used to save to buy a house or only for rent?
Oh, you can buy a house. You can do house payments out of it. Qualifying disability expenses includes shelter costs. That's what they call it, shelter costs. So that could include rent or house payment or your down payment on a house. Absolutely.
Okay. And one more question. How does EIP, economic impact payment, affect benefits?
So the stimulus payments that people have been getting do not count for any of these federal benefit programs. So they're not going to count for anything from Social Security. And JFS has announced that they're not counting for any of the JFS benefits. So those stimulus payments are not going to impact benefits eligibility for anything. The other thing that's really exciting, and Social Security just announced this is fantastic to get to share this with you. Unemployment benefits during the pandemic do not count for SSI. And originally they had said at the beginning of the pandemic that they were going to count. And so it was going to wreak havoc for people. Because remember, earned income, you get all these disregards, right? But unearned income, you just get that $20 disregard. So a bunch of people were going to be losing money on SSI because of their unemployment benefits. But they just announced that they are not going to count any of those unemployment benefits, whether they were state unemployment benefits or any of the pandemic unemployment assistance from the federal government. None of that will impact SSI benefits. Anything else, Julia?
No, that's it for now. Thanks, Deborah. Thank you, everyone,
Thank you, Julia.
for your questions.
I appreciate, yeah, they are asking great questions. I love it. So if you're on SSI and you're thinking about going to work, I wanted to let you know about some resources that could help you prepare for, find, or even keep a job. So the first one is Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And some of you may be familiar with them. They used to be called BVR. BVR is actually still this section that would be helping someone with a mental health diagnosis, or Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. They can help pay for education or training. They can help do assessments to help people find a good job that's a nice match for what they have. They do job development and placement. They can offer job coaching services, which is someone who actually goes with you on site oftentimes to a job and helps you retain that job. My son actually had a job coach and he had it through ICRON. So that's the next thing I've got are some employment networks. I've got Easter Seals and ICRON there. My son actually had a job coach through ICRON who did not go on site with him because he did not want a job coach at work with him. He didn't want people to know he had a disability, but she was available for him to call. And so she would call him once a week and touch base and see how things were going at work. But he could also call her if he had issues. So for example, one time he had an issue, had a conflict with one of his coworkers, and he was really upset about it. And he tried talking to the boss about it, his supervisor about it, and the supervisor wasn't very responsive. And he was really frustrated. He was really ready to quit his job and walk away. He was just like, I'm done, I'm frustrated. And instead he called his job coach and she talked him through it. And they did some role plays over the phone. And he went in the next day and talked to his supervisor again, using some of the advice from his job coach. And they were able to solve the problem and he kept his job. So that was huge. And then there's other agencies that offer similar job assistance services. And one that's in a lot of the counties we serve here, it's NAMI Southwest Ohio, is Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health. So that's another resource for folks. So if you want help finding a job, if you need some extra training, or you're not even sure what kind of job's a good fit, what's your niche, what would be a good fit for you, these are some organizations that might be able to help you. And all of these services from all these organizations are free. So that's the beautiful thing. They're all free. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the Ticket to Work and the services you can get through the Ticket to Work. So if somebody is getting a benefit from Social Security, and it doesn't matter whether it's Social Security disability or childhood disability benefits or SSI, if they're getting a disability-based benefit from Social Security, then they get a Ticket to Work. And people think of it as like something you can hold, like the golden ticket from Willy Wonka. It's not really like that. It is a concept more than an actual piece of paper. But the ticket is a tool that you can use to get help from employment networks, which provide the services we just talked about that help finding a job, help with training, supportive services while you're on the job. And it also can pay for WIPA services or work incentives planning and assistance services, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And the nice thing about the Ticket to Work is that Social Security pays for these services for you. You don't have to pay anything out of pocket for them. They're absolutely free to you. And while you are using your ticket and you are making progress towards your vocational goals, they're not going to do any medical reviews to see if you've medically improved, which can be huge. I think sometimes people worry that if they go to work, that instantly Social Security is going to look to see whether they've medically improved and stop their benefits. And that's not going to happen while you're making progress on the Ticket to Work. So we talked about employment network services. I want to talk a little bit about WIPA services. So WIPA services are individually tailored services where they talk to you about your benefits, all of your benefits, not just your Social Security benefits, but subsidized housing, food stamp or SNAP benefits, your health coverage, anything that you've got. And they talk about your work. How much are you earning? How many hours are you working? And they do an individualized analysis to tell you exactly how your work is going to impact your benefits. It's tailored specifically to you. They give it to you in writing, they go over it with you and explain everything, and then they can help you. So for example, if they decide that you think you have some impairment related work expenses, for example, they can help you to gather that evidence and submit it to Social Security. They can help you just navigate that, all those challenges as you're working. And let's say, so you get a job and 6 months from now, they offer you a raise and now you're like, okay, now what happens? You can call back to the WIPA agency and ask them that question, now what happens? And they can give you that information and help you make informed choices about your work and understand fully what's going to happen to your benefits. They can also help you apply for things like Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities. They can help you calculate that individualized threshold for 1619B Medicaid if you qualify. And so they're just a wonderful free resource for anybody who's getting a Social Security benefit and working. I give you information on the resource slide about how to contact them, so can't recommend it enough. Are there any questions about the Ticket to Work services before I move on?
Not yet. Janice thanks you for great and helpful answers, Deborah.
You're welcome, Janice. I appreciate the questions. All right,
No
I'm
question.
going to move on. Oh,
okay, there's one. Can you use WIPA before getting SSI?
so you have to be eligible for Social Security benefits to get it. So if you're not, if you just applied for SSI and you're waiting or you're thinking about applying, no, you're not eligible for WIPA services until you're getting a Social Security benefit. All right, I don't see anything else. I am going to go ahead and move on. So it's really, really, really important when you're getting SSI and you're working that you report your wages, and you should report them by the 6th of each month. So whatever you earn in August, you're going to report by September 6th. And remember, then it's going to impact your October payment because of that 2-month lag. You can do it by calling your local office. You can mail them copies of your pay stubs. Under normal circumstances, you can walk into your local office, but please know that right now, offices are still closed due to the pandemic, and there's no plan for when the local offices will be reopening. Or you can use a mobile phone app. Those are some ways you can report. But the way I really recommend you report is by using your My Social Security account. And so if you create a My Social Security account, if you don't already have one, you have to then notify Social Security you have an account and let them know about the first pay stub you get. And they'll put your employer information into your My Social Security account. So the next time you log on, there'll actually be a tab for report wages, and there'll be a drop-down menu. And when you click on that, your employer will appear on that drop-down menu. I recommend this way of reporting because it's quick, it's easy. You can do it from home or the library or wherever you have internet access. And you can do it any way you want. So you can do it on a monthly basis. I have some clients who are like, I get paid weekly and I'm not organized enough to keep everything together to report monthly. I'm like, then report weekly. That's absolutely fine. You can do that. But you also get, you have a record that you reported. So you have proof. If Social Security comes back 6 months from now and says, you never told us about your work, you have this proof that you've been wage reporting because you've been doing it online. No matter how you report, the most important thing is to keep a record of when and how you reported every month. And it's really important that you report every month, because if your income is going a little bit up and a little bit down, then it's going to affect the amount of your SSI payment. It's going to go a little bit up and a little bit down. So it's really important that you report your wages on a monthly basis. So here's that magic resource slide I kept saying I had for you guys. This has all the resources from all the presentations. I'm going to highlight the ones that are most important for the things we talked about today. So somebody had a question actually about what are the rules for people with mental health. I'm just going to point out that the listing of impairments that I have here is the rules for people with disabilities, how severe their disabilities have to be able to work. So you can look at that. You want to know where your local office is for Social Security. If you're not sure which one serves you, you can use the local office locator. You just put in your zip code and click on locate, and it will tell you where the local office is for you. It'll give you their address. It'll give you their phone number. And the new feature that's wonderful is it will give you a fax number. So if you want to fax pay stubs, that's an option now. So if you want to find an employment network or find the WIPA near you to help you understand how your work's going to impact your benefits or help you with supportive services for work, you can go to the Ticket to Work information and referrals. And I've given you guys a website here, and you can go to that website and get that information and get the referral that you need to get whatever services you need, whether that's an employment network or whether that's WIPA services. The Red Book is a publication that Social Security publishes about once a year. that talks about all of the work rules. And so it's just a really great, easy to read resource if you have general questions about work and benefits. So highly recommend it, and it's available online now. So I've given you guys a link so that you can find that resource. I've also given you the link again for the stable account. So if you want to set up a stable account, you've got that information. And then if you need legal help with your benefits, so let's say you get an SSI termination notice or a denial notice or an overpayment notice, I've given you guys some information. So if you're in the service area in Southwest Ohio, you can contact the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati. You can also try the Cincinnati Bar Association's lawyer referral service, or you can try if you're in Northern Kentucky, because I know we get some folks at NAMI of Southwest Ohio who actually live in Kentucky, Legal Aid of the Bluegrass. So I've given you guys information about all of those resources. Are there any questions about those resources? Actually, we're to the point where if you have questions, you can let me know. So I'd love to answer any questions you guys have. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. And at this point, if you're more comfortable unmuting yourself and asking a question, that's absolutely fine. But please remember, I don't want it to be individual questions about your situation. I want it to be questions about the materials that we've covered today. So Julia, do we have any in the chat box? I'm actually gonna stop sharing. So
A comment saying this has been great. Thank you, Deborah. This has been great. While y'all are thinking of questions, I'm going to put a link in the chat box for a survey for an evaluation. If y'all could please take that. And also if y'all could indicate if on one screen, there are 2 people watching, let us know so that I can just add that to our numbers. It really helps us in our reporting and enables us. The surveys you'll fill as well as the numbers we have enables us to continue bringing these programs to you all. Okay, so please do give us suggestions on what we can bring. And I think there are a couple of questions from Vicky Sanders. I think she said, thank you. There are 3 new
I can see the chat box now.
Oh, you can see it now. Okay, so.
Thanks, Julia.
Yeah, I will let you see that. I'll get the link to the evaluation.
So Julia's going to put in the link for the evaluations, and then she'll send out the presentation and the recording when it's available to everybody who's participated. So if you want that information, I encourage you to do the survey so that Julia knows you were here, has your information to get you the link for the presentation materials and also for the recording.
Absolutely.
And just so you,
that'll really help.
Yeah, the other thing I'm going to ask Julia to send you guys, and I did it for the first presentation, and just a reminder, we can send it for every presentation, is I did an acronym cheat sheet for you guys, because I know that it gets really confusing with all those acronyms. I'm talking about IRWIs and BWIs and passes. So I did do an acronym cheat sheet to help you guys to understand all that. So Julia, if you could make sure to send that with the other materials, I'd really appreciate it. And if you don't have it, let me know. I can get it for you if Katie has it.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So if no one's going to report resources that you're receiving, what would be a reason for reporting them to SSI? Does that make sense?
The reason you want to report your resources to SSI is because if you don't, it's considered fraud and you can be prosecuted criminally. And they will find out. They do annual redeterminations with you, and they ask for all kinds of documentation. So they're going to look at your banking statements. They're going to look at any life insurance policies that you have. They have databases where they can search for all kinds of information about resources. And so if you don't report and they're going to find out, you could potentially end up in trouble. And that's why I think the stable account, which I say it's new. I still say it's new, but it's about 5 years old. But it's just a great tool because it allows you to have those resources and put them in the stable account, and then you can report it. You've met your obligations, and it's not going to count up to $100,000. So that's just a wonderful tool to be able to do it. But they do have access to all kinds of databases, things that you wouldn't even imagine. And I regularly deal with people who contact me in a panic because Social Security sends them a notice saying, we found that you haven't been eligible for benefits since March of 2018 because you've been over the resource limit. And they provide information about the resource they found. And now you've got an overpayment of thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's much easier to be proactive and report than to have to deal with that situation.
Thanks. And yeah, the stable account, that's amazing. So have you encountered anyone who's had trouble with that? Like
With a stable account? Nope. And here's the amazing thing. So it's administered by the Ohio State Treasurer's Office. But the only person that you would get in trouble with it, because all of the income for that account, so your investment income and everything, it's tax deferred. It's because it's considered like a 529 plan. So you're not paying taxes on any income that you're making on the investments in that account. The only one that would ever audit it is the IRS. And I have not had a single client tell me they had an IRS audit of their stable account in 5 years. Or maybe they've audited it and they haven't had problems, so they didn't know about it. So
I have a question about the stable account.
Yeah.
If you weren't diagnosed till later, but you had obvious signs before 26, would you still be included or able to have a stable account?
So what they let you do is self-certify. And so what I've done for a couple of clients who maybe they weren't diagnosed till 27 or 28, but they clearly were having symptoms and issues. I've had their psychiatrist or their psychologist do a statement saying, you know, they've been having symptoms since they were 24. That's what this incident was about. That's what that incident was about. But they didn't get their diagnosis until after age 26. And I've not had anybody challenged on that.
Okay, and then my second question is, I go back and forth. Right now I'm residing in another state. I'm sorry. I'm residing in another state, but I'm moving back there, I think. Can I still use, I'm born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. Can I still use stable account there in Ohio, or since I'm out of state, is it no longer any benefit to me?
Stable accounts are open to anybody in the United States, so you don't have to be in the state of Ohio, but do know that there are very small nominal fees. They used to be larger, but everybody who joins, they reduce the fees. So they're very small fees associated with having those accounts. But if you live out of state, it's just a little bit more than if you live in state. So be sure and let them know if you open an account from out of state, be sure and let them know when you move to Ohio, because that could actually reduce your investment fees.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And other states have ABLE accounts. I mean, you can shop around and look at other states, but in other states, they call it ABLE because that's what the federal law says. Ohio had to be special and add the state. So it became a stable account.
Oh, okay. So it's ABLE account?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Let me, okay, I've put the link to the evaluation in the chat box. If you all would like any of the resources, the copies of the slides and the recordings sent to you all, please email me also. I've put my email in the chat so that I make sure it's sent to you as fast as possible. Thank you, Deborah. This has been amazing. I know a lot of people have told us how helpful this is.
Good.
And you are really the best when it comes to this. So, I mean, I've heard Deborah at our support groups, and the information she shares with the participants is a lot. So thank you again. And we are going to have we have the series called Mental Health and Racism. It's quarterly, and the next one is on September 12th. It's a Sunday at 3 o'clock. I checked the website. It is not showing up right now, but our website is being revamped. So there are some glitches, but please do spread the word, and we'd like to see you attend that. There are going to be some really amazing speakers on the panel. And we have a class, a family-to-family class starting on September the 8th. And then we have our support groups. Check our website for support groups and classes because of the uncertainty with the pandemic, things are going back and forth. We went back online, we are back again. We went back in person, we are back again online. So do check our website for updates. Thank you again. We have 1 minute left if anyone has a last question. Annie says, very helpful. Thank you so much. And Jolie says, thank you all. So I know everybody is really appreciative of everything you've shared, Deborah. Any last questions?
Well, I just want to do a quick thank you. You guys have been wonderful. I've really enjoyed your questions and you've made it interactive, and that always, I think, makes it a better quality presentation. So thank you all to ask the questions and spend the time with me this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Bye.